Today on the show, we're taking a hard look at the Batarians, their motivations, and what makes them the misunderstood villains of the Mass Effect universe. Welcome to Lore Party, the podcast that explores the stories, characters, and universes of our favorite video games. I'm Connor.
I'm Kevin.
And Kevin, I'm just so excited today to introduce our very special guest. It's been a long time coming. We're way overdue on this, but it's my genuine pleasure to introduce Matt Storm, aka Stormageddon, to the show in the cut with us. How's it going, Matt?
Good. I'm happy to be here. It's funny, for all the time I spend hanging out with y'all in your Discord and just playing games with y'all, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. This is my first time on the show, and I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, it's a real red letter day, and I think for a long time we've basically, I mean, Kevin, you can back me up on this. We've basically considered Matt just an honorary member of Lore Party for a while now.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, you might as well just come to meetings. Like, it's fine.
I as everyone knows, I need more podcasts to work on. I clearly don't do enough as it is.
You don't have enough, yeah. Keep collecting them. But no, it's, yeah, we hang out all the time, and it's hard to believe this is your first time just on the mic with us as a guest host. And I'm really excited about our topic today, too. This is going to be a great episode having you on board with us on this one. We're exploring the Batarians as a people. They're if you're not aware, they're a fictional race from the Mass Effect games, and they're kind of defined by this conflict between themselves and humanity. But I think, the three of us, we know at least that it really goes beyond just a simple, disagreement between heroes and bandits. I think there's a lot more to the Batarians than meets the eye. So I'm really excited to get into that.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Mass Effect universe is no stranger to the villains actually secretly being the oppressed people under a genocidal attack. So, just the sky's the limit for how poorly the humans have really been treating these people when we look deep down at it.
That's definitely a theme.
I would also like to note it's not just humans who also stereotype and treat Batarians badly.
That's true.
But we're pretty shitty. I noticed a theme in our episodes. It's like, man, humans really suck. But we're not the nicest to everybody. But yeah, Batarians, oh boy, do we really not like them.
You could say humanity doesn't have a monopoly on oppression and prejudice necessarily, but we are pretty good at it. We have a knack for it. Yeah. So what we're going to get into is just sort of the way the Batarians appear in the first two Mass Effect games particularly, but we also want to, analyze the role they play in the series as a whole, dive into their history, and then ultimately get into the arc they experience as a civilization leading into Mass Effect 3. So they as a people, the Batarians, they really go on a journey over the course of these three games, and that's the journey we're going to go on today. But first, a few housekeeping items really quick. Just want to put it out there. We love to hear from our listeners. If you're listening right now, please feel free to email us anytime you want at lorepartypodcast@gmail.com with your thoughts, your episode ideas, critiques, mean comments, favorite recipes. We want to hear all of it.
Seriously, we love it. We really love it.
Also, our teams, our hosts, producers, we occasionally stream on Twitch, actually weekly. On a weekly basis, you can catch us on Twitch. So be sure to follow us on twitch.tv/lore_party. And of course, you can always connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at lore_party. With that out of the way, let's start. Let's get into this. But why are we talking about this? I mean,
seriously, Connor, what's the deal? Why the Batarians, man?
When Matt and I were, a while back talking about hey, we want to get you on the show. What should we talk about? We were trading ideas back and forth, and I think, the word Batarians. Actually, Kevin, you put it in my mind about just there are big decisions that you make as a player in Mass Effect, but we'll actually talk about one of those decisions later on, but it involves the Batarians. And I think that just put the seed in my mind of I just want to get into them as a people and the part that their civilization plays in the series. And, putting in the ball in Matt's court, I think you were interested in just getting below the surface level of this alien species, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy in Mass Effect, especially certain races within the games, to just look at them and be like, they're cannon fodder. I mean, it's what they brilliantly do with the Geth from game 1 to game 3, right? Whereas at the beginning of game 1, you're like, these are the enemies. They are the Nazi cannon fodder equivalent. And then by the third game, you go, oh no, we've made some mistakes. They're not bad guys at all. And like, you make that realization based on the arc that they brilliantly write for this race. And the Batarians are interesting to me because I feel like a lot of the other races within the games, like the Hanar, the Drell, the Krogans, everybody kind of gets an arc and an understanding. But the Batarians, for the most part, are hired thugs, slavers, and pirates throughout the games, with some minor exceptions. There's a character that comes to mind in the third game that I'll talk about later, who seems like just a normal dude in the same way Shepard kind of seems like a normal dude. But like, that's one Batarian, and like we never get a Batarian squad mate. And of course, we don't get Volus squad mates either. We don't get like Elcor squad mates, but also famously, those characters aren't really made for combat. Batarians clearly are, and like every other combat-ready race serves with Shepard at some point, and the Batarians don't. And so all of that makes it really fascinating as to why are the Batarians always kind of ostracized by everybody? Is it their fault? Is it the kind of people that they are? Or is it broader than that? Because that seems kind of narrow-minded and, quite frankly, and bluntly racist to just be like, oh, they're just bad because they're Batarians, right?
Right.
Like, there has to definitely be more to it.
Yeah.
What gets me, too, is the fact that if you look at a lot of these other species, it's kind of just like what you said with the Geth and stuff. Like, they have this thing where in the beginning of the first game, you're kind of like all getting thrown at like human propaganda or like even Citadel propaganda of like, this is what the race is supposed to be like. And then we experience this, like all these different species through our own experiences as Shepard. And it's not really exactly the same as the said, database would have told you. I mean, and the thing is, the database evolves throughout the games and starts including specific different really small little tidbits based on Shepard's experience, like kind of different definitions of who they are, and add stuff to like, actually, and they're also like this, and so I think it's interesting that you say that, like, with the Geth and stuff, like it's kind of almost similar to the Batarians, and like especially towards the last game.
I mean, I think you're completely right, Kevin. And also something to look at is like, the council has 3 races on it. Eventually we get a human council member too, though that doesn't go well for anybody by the third game. and then there are like diplomats of Elcor and Volus and Hanar on the station. But like they're on the Citadel, there is no Batarian representation unless they are in the bars or causing trouble. And like, it's just a glaring omission that's easy to miss the first couple times through the trilogy, but someone like all of us on this call, for the most part, who've played these games many times, it becomes more obvious as to like, because like, for example, the Volus also are often looked at as traitors and shady, super smart, but like not always like on the up and up, but still they don't have the kind of rap that the Batarians do. And like, when Connor brought this up to me, I was like, I don't know that much about the Batarians, me personally. And I think it'd be a really interesting thing to talk about them, learn more about them, and maybe try and understand why they're so hated. Is it something that they did? Or is it something that just the universe is kind of like, we're leaning into a stereotype that's easy because of what we see of them out in the world?
Yeah. Yeah, I think in sci-fi properties, there just tends to be a faceless villain that sort of fills a niche. And it's good when that sci-fi property gives them some glow up and that's one way to put it, but like gives them the spotlight and some room to grow. And so the Batarians, if anyone is not familiar with the Mass Effect games, or like if you just don't remember what they look like, you haven't played in a while, they're pretty distinctive. They are bipedal humanoid aliens, most distinctively recognized by their 2 sets of eyes. So they have 4 eyes. They're native to the planet Karshan in the Harsa system, and their society is ruled by a very strict caste system and a rigid authoritarian government. So kind of as by their own nature, they just tend not to trust easily. And when you go into the Mass Effect world in the first game, you learn early on that the Batarians are kind of outsiders. They don't really have council representation, like Matt said. They have tense relations with the Citadel in general, and they're just not great neighbors, as what most people describe them as. It's not fun to live next to them. They continue to have little border skirmishes. They usually avoid outright war in their history generally, but as the humans found out when they first started to settle the galaxy, Batarians who happen to be raiders and pirates and slavers are a common threat faced by settlers in the outside of Citadel space. So it's easy to see how they gain this reputation as just malcontents that no one gets along with. And, we'll pick that apart later, but that's kind of the first impression you get as a player coming into Mass Effect.
Now, keep in mind the representation you see in the beginning and the majority that you hear about in the first game especially is of the Batarians that are not really within localized Batarian space. And so like those slavers, and that's not really them. Obviously, the group of people doesn't represent all the people, and that's really the big case here, is because that kind of stuff isn't. It's kind of looked frowned upon in Batarian government and Batarian social structures in some ways.
Right. Yeah, it's key to understand that the Batarians you encounter in the game generally, or at least early on, like the pirates you fight, like you said, Kevin, they're not representative of Batarians as a whole, but they kind of ruin the reputation of the race for everyone else in that way. It's kind of like you deal with the fringes of Batarian society generally.
The negative stereotype is the loudest stereotype for Batarians within Citadel space. That's just how it goes for them.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and also keep in mind from Shepard's perspective, I mean, this whole trilogy is based on you creating a human character that you then pick a backstory for, that then you live out and almost create your own living fanfic of, as it were. And one of the backgrounds that you can choose for Shepard is to have been taken at a young age by Batarian slavers and have barely escaped, which comes back in the later games when you encounter another human who has escaped the Batarian slavers. And so, that's also something coloring the perspective, right? If you are a Shepard who is captured by slavers as a child and had to escape, you're not going to look fondly on them because of your own personal experiences, which on a certain level is absolutely 100% valid, right? If it's the only experience that's how you're going to react. And so I think the game does set us up to view them negatively from an early start just based on that. And it isn't until towards the end of the second game that we get a broader scope of who they are and also the kind of damage we can do to them. And we'll get to that. But I think it's important to note that the game does kind of set you up in the beginning, especially of the first one, to be all right, well, at least this section of this entire race, they kidnapped me, killed my family. How should I feel about them? I shouldn't be happy about that by any means.
For sure. Yeah. And it's, we mentioned slavery and slaver gangs of Batarians who, capture slaves and sell them or whatnot. And it's important to note that slavery is basically a key component of their society. It's kind of built into their civilization. It's kind of their caste system and their government sort of signs off on the practice. This is not me excusing that at all. I'm just saying it's kind of core to how they function. So it's not like they just do it just to do it, just out of pure cruelty. It's just kind of that's how they operate. So it's a nuance that, of course, again, does not do them any favors in terms of relations, and especially like Matt pointed out, it can set certain people up for a long-term animosity.
They are not set up for success. That's kind of
a bit of self-destructive
how it goes. And even their government being a super really kind of paranoid in general doesn't help. And that's the thing is they have those things like kind of built into their societies, like history and stuff. And they've like started to kind of say, oh, we're gonna look down upon this, to kind of almost look like in favor of other people to try to fix stuff. And it's kind of like some Batarians are like, hey, like, you're just doing this to, you know, the normies want us to, you know, assimilate to them. That's kind of almost how like their society is viewing the whole, like, you know, slavery and pirates and that kind of stuff, because the government is starting to like really try to like appease Citadel space, because they want to be able to like have better trading relations. They want to be able to have all these better things. So they're like, government says they're gonna start looking down upon it, like I said earlier, but like, is that really the case? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting how from the wiki, I was reading the wiki earlier, and it points out how slavery is so integral to Batarian culture that it's kind of like they almost consider it discriminatory for the council to be anti-slavery. So I was like, what do you have against us? Like you pointed out, Kevin, that it's like the Batarians almost have a stubbornness about, like, you know, you can't change our way of life. This is just how we are. But then I think over time they realize, like, no, this is a dead end road. We're gonna have to at least look like we're interested in changing with the times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So at least have that appearance. But that does point us toward Batarian and council relations are, you know, it's a long and complicated history, and then humans come along and complicate it even more, because I think humanity has this trope almost of being the new kid on the block. They arrive at the galactic table, the big kids table, and just, you know, be disruptive and annoying. And I think the Batarians were maybe the most annoyed out of everybody. Just like, who are these hairless pink monkeys, like, showing up and thinking that they can just, you know, claim the stars and whatnot. And the way the Batarians isolate themselves, or at least their government isolates themselves, doesn't help with this. They kind of, you know, they just want to have as little to do with other races as possible, generally. So they just mostly want to be left alone. And then the humans kind of come into space that the Batarians had claimed earlier. Like, I think the Skyllian Verge is one of those parts of the galaxy that the Batarians considered to belong to them, but that claim isn't backed up by the Citadel. So when the humans settle there, like, they can't really do anything about it. So it's like, you know, when you don't have a good relationship with the Citadel, and then the humans show up, you can't expect the Citadel to solve your dispute with them. So it's kind of like their isolationism came back to bite them a little bit there. So that's kind of how humans and Batarians get off on the wrong foot, and it doesn't really get any better from there.
No, I mean, after, you know, they attacked the human colony Elysium, which is often referred to as the Skyllian Blitz, and another thing you can, like, sub into the Shepard's backstory. At the end of the first game, there's a DLC called Bring Down the Sky, and it's the first time you really encounter Batarians. Batarians are in the world before that, but like the first time you go head to head with a Batarian is on that mission where you're trying to save scientists, and the Batarian is trying to blow up a planet by directing an asteroid, the science asteroid, towards it, and you end up left with the decision to kill this Batarian, but then you have to chase him, and then the science staff dies, or you do the Paragon thing and save the staff and he gets away. And that plays later. You encounter that Batarian again, whose name escapes me at the top of my head. But like it things like that, moments like that, when you're playing Shepard, it's like, well, why would I think any of these people are good? Look at what this one did. And yes, of course, we're supposed to be bigger than that and look beyond that. But that mission is very much designed to set up Batarians are bad guys, which is not an uncommon sci-fi trope. I mean, you mentioned some other sci-fi stuff before, but like, think about the Klingons, right? Sure. In original Star Trek, they were just enemies, flat out, no questions asked. But by the time we get to the Next Generation and characters like Worf, it's like, oh no, there's actually a lot of diversity to this society we just didn't understand. And I feel like it's very easy to look at the Batarians in a similar light, like, because the perspectives we're stepping into and the perspectives provided are very aggressive. Now, yes, we can't talk our way out of slavery being a part of their whole society. Like, that's problematic on an endless amount of levels. But the game does present Batarians often as the villain. And unlike other things that me and Kevin mentioned earlier, there doesn't seem to be a ton of redemption. Like, it's mostly a case by case. Like, as you meet Batarians, you can choose to help them or work with them or negotiate with them. But none of them are ever like, hey, what's going on, bud? How are you?
Right.
I'd love to meet you. Like, you know, it's never like that. And I think Bring Down the Sky is a big part of that. Now, is that intentional by the writers? Possibly. I mean, it is common for video games to have cannon fodder, right? Enemies that you don't feel bad about killing. But we on Lore Party are trying to explore more than just that, right? That's not an acceptable answer, is that they're cannon fodder. We want to know more about why they are being used as cannon fodder, and should they be?
Yeah, I think that definitely just ties back into, you know, humans showing up and disrupting what the Batarians were used to, and them not being able to really rely on the Citadel because they don't get along with the Citadel. And we as people, and we as a human character and Commander Shepard, interact with, like we mentioned, kind of the fringes of Batarian society: the pirates, the slavers, the terrorists, the ones who aren't representative of the rest, like just normal Batarian people back home in the Harsa system, trying to get along and just trying to scrape by. So it's kind of like, the negative stereotype speaks the loudest, but it's really important to look past that. And
I think it's difficult with a race like the Batarians to just go, we should treat them better, right? I mean, take what happens in Mass Effect 2 also. The Arrival DLC is Mass Effect 2 is the only game where it has post-game content. Mass Effect 1 ends when you beat the game. Mass Effect 3 ends when you beat the game. There's no after beat the game content like a lot of RPGs have. But Mass Effect 2 does, because it had a lot of post-story DLC, including Arrival, which was released when we got closer to the release of Mass Effect 3. What Arrival is Shepard gets a transmission from a scientist saying that they have a way to possibly delay the Reapers, but she's not sure. But she'd been kidnapped, and you're asked to go rescue her. When you rescue her, you find out that her and her team actually have a Reaper artifact and are being controlled by it. But also, Sovereign is on his way to this relay, and this relay, if Sovereign hits it, will have like a straight shot to Citadel space to take over, along with the other Reapers behind him. And you're left with this choice to, I'm kind of rushing the DLC, but you're left with this choice ultimately where Shepard can either destroy this mass relay to delay Sovereign and the rest of the Reapers long enough to try and formulate a plan, though we see how well that goes anyway, or not, and then the Reapers arrive and they're here now. If Shepard destroys that mass relay, he is going to destroy a mostly Batarian-populated system. And though his action is considered justifiable because it's, kill the few to save the many, still, for the Batarian people, this is a whole sector of just Batarians that were killed because we think the Reapers are coming. Now, once the Reapers arrive, Shepard's kind of like, haha, I'm right. But at that point, it doesn't matter. But the game doesn't even give you the chance to warn the Batarians, right? It's just because this is an excuse for the third game to start with Shepard kind of court-martialed and under observation because of this ridiculous act that, while important, killed so many people. It was a genocide, essentially. And so for the Batarians to then hate humans after that, even though they didn't like them before, I think is very much justified, because one human wiped out an entire system.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't already have a great reputation in general in Citadel space. From when humans started showing up, we didn't have a great reputation, and we didn't necessarily, I in my view of understanding the history and playing these games, humans in general never had a great reputation. We looked power hungry. We looked like we were just, it's the new kid in school and we're already the shit. We really like ourselves. And so we gave a lot of people excuses, and people were looking for excuses to not like us. And, one human destroying an entire sector like that is kind of that's a pretty good excuse to literally hate all humans.
Yeah, and it's not like Shepard can go to the Batarian government and just explain, like, no, you don't get it because, Sovereign was coming. I had to make the hard call, and it was the best possible option. Like, it's not like they have no reason to believe anything a human says. It's just one of those things, like, the trust is just not there. And even if it was there, it would still be really hard to explain, like, why you had to wipe out an entire system's worth of, another people, another population. It's kind of like, there's just no talking that away, even if, you could theoretically argue like it was the best possible thing for everyone in the galaxy. But just the trust was not there to begin with. There's no way you could explain that away. And it got, as we've established, got way worse from there. So, a lot of animosity between humans and Batarians at the end of Mass Effect 2 and heading into 3, where, the Reaper invasion will make things a lot more complicated. And I think Mass Effect 3's arc gives us a better understanding of not just who the Batarians really are behind that facade of, lawlessness and the cannon fodder, the faceless enemy that you can justify killing. Not only what they really are behind that, but what they can be, what they could grow to be, which is great. All right, we're going to keep this conversation going, but first, a quick break.
Okay, so we've talked about kind of the general gist of Batarians, humans, Batarian Citadel, like how those relationships kind of go about. But let's kind of look at, I like what you wrote here, what lies underneath. Mm-hmm. We're going to go under the hood here and kind of really go a little bit further into Batarian society and what we get to view and what, the database kind of shows us. Because the Batarians have like a totalitarian and kind of isolationist nature. Like their whole society kind of has that. And so as players, we don't get, like I said earlier, we don't get the most accurate and representative picture possible because we only get to see what is given to us by not just the Alliance military and all that from just Shepard being in the military, but also whatever the Citadel has on them and the relationship the Citadel has on them, that's most likely what they're going to provide. And obviously we know it's not great. And so we primarily interact with the quote unquote, the dregs of Batarian civilization. Yeah. And those guys are they're forced to kind of subsist in the lawless sectors between Batarian and Citadel space. And I want to say that I'm going to just say it. I think it's possible that these individuals do give a false impression of Batarians as a whole. Like I said, the negative is the loudest. Absolutely. Like they're the most, in your face. Because also that's what we interact with most anyway. Right. Like that's what the Citadel interacts with most. So I don't just think that the negative stereotype is the loudest. I don't just think that those guys are the loudest Batarians, but also they're the ones that really do interact with Citadel space the most because, like I said earlier, the Batarians are kind of, they're isolationists and they kind of want to be left alone and let them do their own thing.
Yeah, if I was going to give it a real world parallel, I keep coming back to this example of North Korea. If you really think about it, it's kind of like North Korea is extremely isolationist and they don't tell their people about anything about the outside world except what it's kind of propaganda. If you're a citizen in North Korea, like you're just a regular person, you are told that everything about the outside world, like the West in general, they want to come and take the food out of your mouth. They want to kick you out of your home. They're evil. So it's kind of like if you translate that into Mass Effect, it's almost like you have the Batarians, sitting in their home systems, the Batarian hegemony, telling their citizens, humans, Asari, Turians, Solarians, whoever, all the Citadel races, they think nothing of you. They don't care about you. All you have is us. It's kind of like, they just feed them a feedback loop of, you have to stay here. You belong to us. And it's kind of like cutting the people off from the rest of the galaxy. And as a side effect of that, we never really get to see what just the normal, honest, hardworking Batarian civilians go through day by day. Like you said, Kevin, all we see are the Batarians that kind of live outside that system or kind of on the fringes of that system as pirates and slavers and mercenaries. So yeah, we definitely get a false impression of them as a race. We don't really get to see behind the curtain, and it's it's sad. I feel bad for the ones that we don't get to hear from that. We don't get to hear a story from, the Batarians who don't make a living, enslaving people and trying to blow up planets with asteroids and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the Batarians that we see are on Omega across 2 and 3. And they are usually either hired guns for Arya, or they're slavers, or they're just mercenaries hanging out, or mercs complaining at the bar. And like, it bums me out because in the third game, we actually do get to know a Batarian for a little while, but they don't even use it as an educational opportunity. I, of course, am talking about one of the greatest Batarian characters in all of Mass Effect, Bray. Right. Bray is Arya's bodyguard, Arya's right-hand man. And when you do the DLC in the third game to take back Omega because Arya has been booted out of Omega by Cerberus, you get to team up with Arya, which is just awesome on its own level. And Bray is, I think, with you in one skirmish, maybe not even, but he like gets you to Arya, and like you chat with Bray a bit. He seems very down to earth. He doesn't hate you immediately. He knows what you're capable of. He even seems to respect you. And like, even when you're leaving after you finish the mission and however it resolves, I won't go into spoilers just in case anyone hasn't finished it, but like, he still seems to respect you and is kind of on your side. And, Bray helps Shepard by providing coordinates he needs. He is very open to talking to you when you're on Omega. This was an opportunity for Bray to talk a little bit, for Bray to become a party member. Yeah. Imagine if after this, because Arya is never going to become a party member, right? As much as we'd love it, not going to happen. Carrie-Anne Moss is too badass for all of us, and it's true. But like, imagine if after all of that skirmish, you get Bray goes, Arya's got her hands full here. There's not much I can do for her. Why don't I come along? And then Bray comes with you, and then you get to do some kind of side mission for Bray to help his family or go see the hegemony. Like, I feel like it was just a missed opportunity. And like, I love the trilogy. I'm not going to go into the argument about how there were a lot of missed opportunities in the third game, because I happen to think the third game is actually still pretty great. But I do think this is a missed opportunity. Imagine if they had the time they could take with this DLC to then make Bray roll over as a Batarian party member, and then you could find out more about the hegemony. Because think about it. Like, we didn't really start learning about the Geth until we had Legion, right? We didn't really start learning about the Asari until not only we had Liara, but then we got Samara to learn even more about them. Like, 99% of what Shepard learns about any individual race is through the party members he gets, and the ship is pretty diverse.
So what you're saying is we should have Batarians as squad mates in the next game.
Yes,
absolutely,
100%, absolutely.
What you experience doesn't even the good and the bad doesn't represent the whole group of people or species, if you will, and I think that says a lot to have these Batarians that we meet throughout all these games just be, like we said, the bad guys. Like, they're just the cannon fodder. And then we meet one that we work with.
Right.
Yeah, I do love Bray. I do love what he represents. And, just speaking of Omega, though, I will backtrack really briefly to Mass Effect 2 before we move on to the rest of what Mass Effect 3 shows us in regards to the Batarians. One of my favorite interactions from Mass Effect 2, again, I haven't finished Mass Effect 2, but I'm playing through it right now, but I did have this interaction earlier. I think everyone does in the quest where you're first meeting Morden. There's a plague on Omega Station, and Batarians are one of the hardest hit populations on Omega. Like, humans get sick from it too, but the Batarians are like getting more so, falling ill and dying from this plague. And Shepard runs across a Batarian who's just, sick and, kind of leaning against a wall, on the verge of death. And Shepard can, help this Batarian and with a metagel or whatever and save his life. And this Batarian is just dumbfounded that a human would help him. So it's kind of like, I do love these moments of building bridges and breaking stereotypes and, showing that, these conflicts, don't need to carry on into every personal interaction. It's like, I'm a human, you're Batarian, but you're still someone, you're still a person that needs help. and I can make that choice to show you a different side of my people, so that gives you the opportunity to show me a different side of yours. And I think we actually have a clip lined up that we could play here.
Human. Should have guessed. Bad enough you infect us with this plague. Now you lack the decency to even wait until I die before you come to steal my possessions.
I need to find Morden Solus.
Humans looking for the human sympathizer. I hope the Vorcha burn Morden and his clinic to the ground. I hope you... I hope... Damn it! Damn you! Can't...
Hey, stay with me. This won't cure the plague, but it might help a bit.
You helped me. Why?
I told you I'm looking for somebody. Would you rather I let you choke on your own blood?
I suppose not. What do you wish to know?
When I find Morden, I'll tell him about you. If he has a cure, I'll make sure someone gets it to you.
Thank you. My time is running short, but at least you have given me a flicker of hope to brighten the darkness of my final hours. I don't want to die. Whatever Morden is, I will risk it if he can reach me.
No, I just love that, surprise, like, why are you helping me? Especially in the context of that scene where the Batarians think, like, oh, the humans are trying to poison us with this plague. It's kind of like this suspicion that goes both ways, this distrust that goes both ways. It's like, any opportunity for a story to go in the direction of breaking this suspicion and breaking the mutual distrust, I like that. It's enjoyable for me.
Yeah, I should mention, though, before your commenters come for you, the humans are immune to the plague, which is why he's so adversarial.
Oh, that's right.
It's why the people who are raiding the homes later are human, because it only affects all other aliens. It, for whatever reason, does not affect humans. But also what's important about that clip and then what happens later is once you actually go back to the station, I think after you've either helped Morden or right before you help Morden, like, he's there and he thanks you. He says, thank you,
That's
human.
right.
Like, he has genuine gratitude. And so, like, I love that you're breaking stereotypes and you've made a friend. Like, if he gets healthy and gets back out there, you could reunite with him at some point and he would be an ally. You would benefit from his assistance maybe somewhere down the line. It's interesting that the game does give us those opportunities, even though, like, you could very much be a person who's like, well, the Batarians don't like us anyway. I'm just going to let him die. It's my metagel. But I mean, you're also a monster then. I don't know anybody who would do that. I do. That's not true. I know a ton of Renegade players who probably would do that. But I think it's important to, like, look at those moments, right? Because those are little glimpses as to what we could have with the Batarians if we just continue to try and build those bridges.
For sure. Speaking of building bridges, I think that is where Mass Effect 3 kind of takes us, or at least it shows us a possibility of that direction that human-Batarian relations could take. Looking at the Reaper War in Mass Effect 3, obviously, a Reaper invasion of the galaxy is, needless to say, not good news for anybody, but I think the Batarians suffered particularly badly. Millions of refugees, from Batarian worlds left scattered and, defend for themselves. But I think there's a choice in Mass Effect 3. Again, I'm speaking like without firsthand knowledge. I've not played Mass Effect 3 yet, but from what I understand, Shepard can choose to cooperate with Batarian, refugee fleet commanders, and he can, again, build that bridge, extend that olive branch, and gain support for the war effort against the Reapers. It's one of those things, like, we can't fight these things alone. It's we stand together or die alone. Classic truism. So, and again, that's a really bright spot, in this arc, or at least it's going in a positive direction of building a diplomatic bridge between the Citadel and the Batarians while fighting back against the Reapers.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most horrifying things about the Reapers in the third game is that all of the enemies you fight are not giant spaceship lobsters. They are converted races amongst the planets you're familiar with. All of your like the first enemy you fight is a cannibal. It's this weird like kind of hulking thing, but it has a roundish head and 4 eyes, and they are converted Batarians. They are some of the first to be converted by the Reapers. Reapers don't have an origin. They have an origin point, but they always take from other races and other beings. And the Batarians get to hit the hardest and first because amongst some of the earliest fights you have are with these cannibals, which are converted Batarians. Yeah. I mean, and also like something to note about the Reaper War and the third game is like it is diplomacy the game. Like Shepard is often frustrated because he has to play diplomat, but like the whole game is brokering trust with some people but losing the trust of others, and like the Batarians fall into that. Like there is no way to play the third game and appease everybody. What you do as Shepard is follow your heart to the best of your ability, or your gut, whichever, to make the alliances to succeed. But I think based on some examples we've said today, and I think more examples that I am confident are out there that we didn't even cover, there's more to the Batarians than just being this race of insufferable shitheels, I guess. I don't know how else to put it, right? And like, I want more media about Mass Effect, but I don't know that I want media about Shepard. I would love like an origin point for the Batarians, like a vignette about like their stories and how they came to power and who are some of the famous leaders on their homeworld, things like that, right? Because that's how you understand races like this a lot better, is creating more information and providing more information.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, even with blowing up that Batarian system, right? It could have so much more like gravitas to the feeling of like, what did I just do? Because to you as the player, a lot of people probably felt that it was still just another number. Okay, all these people, like, because we've only really ever seen them as, again, just the bad guys. We don't get. I don't think we had enough interactions with them to where the weight, like the heaviness of like, I just destroyed an entire system of people. Like, it's not humans. It's not like I did. Like if you told me I was going to destroy an entire section of Turians, I'd be like, oh shit, oh no, okay. Like if you said the same thing like Krogans, like stuff like that, like even a Krogan, right? Like it's like, oh, the Krogans found this other, this is a peaceful sector of Krogan space, and I had to just destroy the like one of the biggest peaceful sectors, like shit like that. Like it would just be like, oh no. Because I know these characters, I know parts of their society. I've seen it. I've experienced these people. Like I've experienced them. Even that, like it's a big deal. It's a big decision. It starts Mass Effect 3, but like it also, I don't think it carries as much weight as it could have.
The stakes aren't set up for an entire Batarian system to be wiped out. For that to have impact, there would need to be more stakes built up. And yeah, like you said, man, I think there's a lost opportunity to show us more of the Batarians just behind, the angry face holding the gun at you, to really understand them, and that's what we've been trying to do here, to really understand them. And hopefully at some point, we can get more of those high stakes stories with impact, with that. If I have to make the decision to blow up an entire Batarian system, I don't just think to myself, okay, well that side quest's done, so I don't just like check off, it's not just a checklist thing. It's an actual impactful moment. And you have to understand a fictional race to really have those stakes. And I think that leads us to the end of our discussion here. We've talked about Batarian history, their relations with other races, just the ways we interact with them and the ways we, maybe get false preconceptions about them and maybe don't get the entire picture. So, I think our takeaway here is it would be nice to have, or at least my takeaway here is, it'd be nice to have more stories about them. I think, Matt, you have a great point of just, like that's fertile ground to explore in future properties. Is just, show us more of them. Let us see more of their real lives, behind the pirate facade.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot about the races we don't get a lot of information on, right? Like I think about the Vorcha a lot too. Like the Vorcha are also hired guns and like hideous to look at, but like, that's based on my aesthetic preference. That's, everyone's beautiful to somebody, right? And I'm not even saying that as a joke, right? Like it's hideous to me because human faces don't do that.
Right.
But like the Vorcha are often hired guns, but you do occasionally meet Vorcha who want to work with you, who want to help you, who want to negotiate. And like, it's the same with the Batarians. I think that if I had to guess, BioWare created the Vorcha and the Batarians to be enemies we can kill with little to no guilt. But that's not good enough for me anymore now that we're 4 games in, rather, and a 5th game on the horizon. I want more. I want to know more about, like, think about all we learned about the Drell in such a short amount of time in the 2nd game, right? And then the 3rd game. Through the Hanar, that they're raised by the Hanar, all of this stuff. Like, you don't need a whole game to teach us more about these people because through Thane, through a party member, we got so much information. And I think not having a Vorcha party member, not having a Batarian party member, both who can hold a gun and can fill that like soldier role or an infiltrator role, I think we would learn as the player so much more. And I would love to see more of that. And so also being a white person, it's like, yeah, most of us, we do suck. So I have realized. Sorry to go there. It's just my brain goes
Don't
there.
apologize.
But
I mean, we're talking about Mass Effect. What do you expect?
Right. So my real life brain goes there, and so I can understand why a human might look at the Batarian leaders and just assume they're all like that. But that's not a good enough answer. And so I hope that us talking about it today has made other people curious about it. I know that there are a ton of Mass Effect comics and I haven't read them all, but I'm hoping that maybe they go into that a little bit. I know there are encyclopedias and like behind the scenes stuff. Like, I just want us to learn more about these races that we just assumed are there to shoot. Because if someone wants to play a game that way, that's fine, but that's not why we're here on Lore Party. It's to learn about the lore of these people. And I just feel like the Batarians specifically got the short end of the stick on that.
Yeah, I'm so glad we had this conversation, Matt. Again, it was a pleasure having you finally on Lore Party. Hope you come back soon when I eventually finish Mass Effect 3. Might be sometime in the next 5 years or so. I don't know. Knowing me, who knows when it'll be. But no, it was a genuine pleasure. Thank you again. Do you want to go ahead and tell the fine folks out there where they can hear and see more of you?
Sure. So I'm in too many places, as both the folks on this call can attest to. The best place to find everything that I do is www.djstormageddon.com. It goes to my link tree, which has all of my podcasts, my Twitch page, my merch store, my Ko-fi if you want to throw a couple bucks my way. If you want to follow me on social media, of all the places, the best place is Twitter, which is also DJ_Stormageddon. Pretty much if you Google DJ_Stormageddon, you will find me. I've made it pretty easy for folks. And then I'll plug this just specifically because of the episode we're doing. I am on a Mass Effect retrospective podcast called Reignite. Kevin has been a guest on it, and it was me and my co-host Frankie playing through the entire Mass Effect trilogy as if we were Shepard and discussing the choices we make based on that. We've now since completed that and are in season 4, taking on Andromeda, a game a Mass Effect super fan, have never played. And so Frankie is guiding me through that experience. As of when we're recording this, we just did Havarl and Vold, and so we're still pretty early on, so you can definitely go jump in and check that out. I have had a lot of fun experience this game outside of the bias that came with it. I can see where the hiccups are, but all in all, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm glad that I waited to play it. So Reignite Pod on all social media if you want to check out more Mass Effect stuff from me. Otherwise, again, DJ_Stormageddon on Twitter and Twitch.
Well, that about wraps it up. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us grow the show. Be sure to connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at @lore_party, and check out our YouTube and Twitch pages for more bonus videos and highlights. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.